All right, we're going to Hawaii today, where we're going to be making poke 3 different ways. Now, I know I'm not in my normal spot, but that's because, just look. I felt bad. I couldn't. Look at this little guy. I couldn't move him. Some people say that poke is just sushi, but in a bowl. That couldn't be farther from the truth. It's been influenced by some of the Japanese immigrants in Hawaii, but poke has existed in Hawaii far longer than that, and it's something far different than you're probably thinking right now. But before we get into that, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to see more of my content. But for now, let's get cooking. Today we're making poke, but not just one kind of poke, 3 different types of poke. A traditional Polynesian style, a version that is inspired by the Japanese immigrants that came to the island, and one that's a more modern take that's from the mainland with all the different toppings. I'm real excited about getting into this, so let's get started. The key to any poke is the fish. We will be using tuna for 2 of these and cooked shrimp for the 3rd one. Now let's focus on that first one, which is going to be our traditional Polynesian style poke. First, with your tuna, we're going to cut that up into bite-sized pieces. Once we have that, we're going to put them back on ice until we're ready for them. Normally you would use kukui nuts, but I can't get them here in my area, so I'm going to use macadamia nuts instead. Add those to a mortar and pestle, and we're going to start grinding them until they become a paste. Make sure to really get in there and pound them until they are completely and utterly smushed. We're going to put that off to the side until we're ready to add them to the fish. Lastly, we need some seaweed. I'm just going to use these little squares I found from our grocery store. I'm just going to slice them up. Make sure to get them nice and small when you're cutting them up. Once that's done, we can add our cubed tuna to the seaweed, add half a teaspoon of pink salt, and 1 full teaspoon of the macadamia nut paste. This is going to add a really lovely nutty flavor to our fish. Mix that up with your hands and then add it to a plastic bag. Now this next step is not necessary, but I just got this, so I want to play with it. I'm going to vacuum seal this fish, and then once it's completely done, I'm going to put that in the fridge and let it sit for 30 minutes. Next, we're going to move on to our second style of poke, and that's going to be the version that is inspired by the Japanese immigrants. That's going to add a few different flavors such as soy sauce and sesame oil to this marinade. So to a bowl, we're going to add a teaspoon of our macadamia nut paste, 2 tablespoons of soy sauce, 1 teaspoon of oyster sauce, 1 teaspoon sesame oil, 1 square of chopped seaweed, and 1 green onion also chopped. Give that a stir until thoroughly mixed, and we're going to add that to a bag with some more chopped tuna. We're going to go back to the vacuum seal, and we're going to make sure to leave this in the fridge for also at minimum 30 minutes. Finally, for our 3rd poke, we're going to be using cooked shrimp for this one, since I know some of you don't like raw fish, so we're going to take out these 4 jumbo-size shrimp. To this bowl, we're going to add 1 teaspoon of freshly grated ginger, 1 teaspoon of the macadamia nut paste, 1 teaspoon of oyster sauce, 1 teaspoon of sesame oil, 1/4 teaspoon of red pepper flakes, and 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. Mix that up with the shrimp, and we're going to cover this in plastic wrap, stick it in the fridge, and let it sit for 30 minutes. Now let's get into a brief history of Hawaii and poke. If Hawaiians from the pre-contact times saw what we call poke, it would be unrecognizable to them. The absolute unmitigated menagerie of what the poke bowl is in the mainland today is just a completely different animal. I do enjoy how creative people will get with this dish, and so many different combinations of flavors and textures makes it quite a unique dish. However, I am very interested in getting back to basics. First of all, what does poke mean? Poke means to slice or cut in Hawaiian, and it refers to the small bits of fish, traditionally ahi, that would be cut off, rubbed with Hawaiian salt, kukui nuts, and seaweed, then eaten raw. That is traditionally poke. No rice, no avocado, no cucumbers, no zucchini noodles, just the fish and these seasonings. It wasn't until the 1970s when poke started appearing in cookbooks and restaurants as we know it today. Before we get to that though, we see poke go through a bit of an evolution once different migrants start to appear. Most notably would be the Japanese immigrants who started to arrive in 1868. It was with the Japanese that flavors such as shoyu, or soy sauce, and sesame oil were added to the marinade. As more and more people started coming to the islands, more and more was added to the poke dish. Fun fact, we may often call them poke bowls, but the bowl is not required for poke. It was often eaten in a bowl because Hawaiians and Japanese just tend to use bowls more than plates. It would be kind of funny if poke originated in the mainland and was served on plates. Just imagine the plethora of poke plate restaurants. Anyway, enough with that. But we see next a popular marinade for poke be a combination of soy sauce, sesame oil, Maui onions, ginger, and chilies. It is still primarily a side dish at this time, a snack if you will. Rice is what makes this dish from a snack to an entree. Roughly in 2012, the mainland poke bowl craze began, with many poke restaurants springing up and everyone going absolutely bonkers over it. However, so many people don't realize that this decorated bowl of goodness started with such a pure and a simple dish, something that is just connected, linked to Hawaii's history, a dish that is so perfectly Hawaiian, displaying its history and its culture, all in a beautiful dish. Poke was and still is an important part of Hawaii's culinary identity, so much so that it's sold in nearly every grocery store there. But that was only a brief history of poke and Hawaii. Now, let's get back to the recipe. It's time to make our rice. To an Instant Pot, I'm going to be adding 2 cups of short grain sushi rice.
Wait, so you don't wash the rice? Not the rice stinky like you.
While I am stinky, this rice will not be. We'll be washing it, running it under some water until the water runs clean. We'll also be adding 2 cups of water to the Instant Pot as well. 1 part rice, 1 part water, simple enough. We'll be adding that to the Instant Pot, and we're gonna let that sit in the water for 30 minutes before we begin cooking it. Once that's done, we're gonna set this to 5 minutes on high pressure cook, and then we just let it go. Once it's done, we have beautiful and perfect sticky rice for our poke. Let's draw our attention to the shrimp. In a small pan, we're gonna add a little bit of olive oil and we're gonna cook the shrimp on both sides, making sure to thoroughly cook, but don't cook too much, just a couple of minutes on each side. We don't want this rubbery. Now, let's assemble our poke. We're gonna start with the first one. Now, listen carefully now. We're gonna take it, put it onto a plate, and that's it. You're done. Good job. This is a simple dish, ready to go, ready to snack on. Now let's start on the next one. I'm gonna stuff some rice into a small bowl and turn that over onto a plate so we have a proper bed for our tuna. Add the tuna on top and I'm gonna finish it off with a little sprinkle of green onion, and there we have our Japanese-inspired poke. For the final bowl, we're gonna cut up our shrimp. Since poke means cut up, we gotta cut up the shrimp. We're gonna add to a bowl our sushi rice. Make sure to pack that in, flatten it out so we have a proper bed for all of our toppings. I'm gonna add some basic avocado, cucumber, put in the shrimp, a little bit of pickled radishes that I had in the fridge, sprinkle some green onions and some sesame seeds on top. And there we have the mainland, more modern version of poke. We have all 3 versions of poke, traditional, Japanese style, and mainland. I'm so ready to dive into this, so let's taste them. Welcome to the taste test. We've got 3 different kinds of poke here. This is the first time I've had more than 1 dish to taste. I'm so excited. I mean, we got contestant number 1, the original traditional poke that was done by the Polynesians before Japanese immigrants came in. Just salt, kukui nuts, or in my case, macadamia nuts, and seaweed rubbed into tuna. Very simple, very fresh. Let's see how this one tastes. That's really good. There's something really nice, very refreshing about just the simpleness of it. The taste from the macadamia nuts and the salt just brings out the natural flavors of the tuna. It's a very good cut of tuna. And then just having the little flakes of seaweed is really nice. Like, this poke was a snack. It wasn't an entree. It wasn't a full meal. It was just something to just kind of munch on. And I could totally see how this one in particular became that. Next, contestant number 2. This is the version that was typically popularized once Japanese immigrants got to the Hawaiian Islands. So we have soy sauce, we have sesame oil, oyster sauce, green onions brought into there, and not a whole lot of rice. This is more of just like a little side of rice. So we're still not quite to an entree yet. We're getting closer though. This is more of a side dish here. But let's give this a taste. I'm gonna try a bite with just the fish first, and I'll try some rice with it. Oh boy, okay. Oh. Just the meat itself, such a deeper flavor. Like, I love contestant number 1 was fantastic, but this has such a deeper flavor to it. It's so nice. I could just keep eating this. Here, let me get a bite with the fish and the rice. And a little bit of that green onion there as well. And then just on top of a nice bed of sticky sushi rice, the soy sauce, the sesame oil. The sesame oil and the macadamia nut really add to this dish. I can really taste it there. But then just adding the soy sauce to it, the oyster sauce, is just, this is, so this beats contestant number 1 so far. But, that's really nice. Next, we have contestant number 3, the mainland version that became popularized and just stuffed with so many toppings. There's avocado, cucumber, pickled radish, green onions, sesame seeds, and instead of tuna, we're doing shrimp, since I realize some of you don't like raw fish. For those of you who don't like the raw fish, have some cooked shrimp. But this definitely, like, aesthetically, it was just absolutely beautiful. I can totally see, especially in the age of, like, Instagram, Snapchat, that this bowl right here became so popular because people could just make them as beautiful as they wanted them to, post them on the internet, and it just by looking at it, people were hungry for it. So let's have a taste of this one. That gotta have like the perfect bite here. Gonna have a bit of shrimp, a cucumber, a pickled radish, a bit of avocado, and some rice. There we go. Little bit of everything in one bite. The shrimp is fantastic. Fresh avocados, cucumber, can't go wrong with that. But even though I love this, and this is typically what I go for whenever I go to a restaurant, something about contestant number 2 here, just the pure tuna with the rice, little bit of green onion to it, just letting the meat and the marinade speak for itself. I find this one to be the more enjoyable experience. Like, I love mainland version over here. Has a lot of good stuff in it. I'll be finishing it for dinner tonight. But this one right here is something that's, just the flavor is richer, it's deeper, it just hits more, it's more memorable to me. Contestant number 3 has too much stuff going on, and it just distracts from the shrimp. The shrimp itself is delicious. I love the marinade. I would probably take a couple of things I add to that marinade, put on the tuna, and that would be fantastic. But there's so much in there that it distracts from the meat, and I kind of like just letting the meat speak for itself. And so I declare the victor, contestant number 2. It is decided. No more contests until the next one. But guys, try all 3 of these. These were so fantastic. I can't believe how well all of these turned out. And I encourage you, please, please, please make it yourself. Comment below. Let me know if you did and how it turned out. And then if you like the video, hit that like button. Subscribe to see more of my content. But until next time, see you later.